We know that Penn State is going to dominate at the Big Ten tournament, but how dominant are we talking? Well, potentially all 10 Penn State wrestlers could end up as Big Ten finalists.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are locked on to Penn State Wrestling. Thanks so much for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen and watch every single day. My name is Zach Sako, and I'm your host of the show. He is Nick Costco. He covers wrestling for On3. He is also the play-by-play voice for Big Ten Plus, covering Rutgers wrestling, so certainly a wrestling expert. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Please leave a like on this episode, share it with friends and family, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and wherever you get your podcasts. If you are new to Locked On Nittany Lions, most importantly, be a part of the conversation down below in the comments section and check out Nick's work with his coverage of NCAA wrestling. So Penn State, we expect them to have take the team title. They're looking for their 9th title overall, but it's about the individuals. Penn State has 5 number 1 overall seeds in this Big Ten tournament. Realistically, I can guarantee that 8 of them are going to reach the Big Ten championship. And that's why getting all 10 might even not be so much of a hot take here. The only ones that are the outliers are Luke Liljedahl and Braden Davis, but I think there is, maybe not, depending on how strong you think the argument is, I think there is an argument that both Liljedahl and Davis could reach the final, but they have some tough paths to go through.
Yeah, Zach, thanks for having me again. First of all, you look at what Penn State brings to the table, the Big Ten tournament, this is basically just checking off another box for Penn State. I think it was a couple of years ago that Michigan won the Big Ten tournament, so it was a big deal at the time, of course. But then, of course, Penn State just takes over for NCAA's, and I expect them to do the same thing here in Evanston when they, and when everybody heads out to Northwestern this weekend, and then, of course, in Philadelphia and NCAA's. Anybody else but Penn State winning the team title in either of these tournaments would be absolutely stunning. And to your point about potentially 10 finalists for Penn State, it certainly stacks up that way. As you mentioned, at least 8. You have a bunch of number 1 seeds, guys that are, number 2, like Tyler Kasak or Josh Barr. They're definitely, the paths are there to go back or to get to the Big Ten finals, I should say. The team is just so darn good. Anything other than, I would probably say if they had less than 8 finalists on by the time we get to Sunday evening, I'd be pretty surprised unless someone got knocked off. And of course, this is where you have to wrestle. Of course, you have to actually wrestle these matches. You can't just, do it all on paper. A guy like Josh Barr, for instance, for how good he is, would I be shocked if he won the national title in a couple of weeks? Absolutely not. That's how good he is. But would I also be stunned if he got knocked off in the semifinals by a guy like Jacob Cardenas, who we wrestled really close in Penn State's duel against Michigan? No, I would not be shocked either. But I think overall, I think you are right based on, a lot of these guys being top 2 seeds, and even guys like Luke Liljedahl and Braden Davis being a Big Ten champion from last year, them to make a run to the finals on Sunday would not be surprisingly. So could we see all 10 in the finals? I think it's definitely a possibility, because it's not like, you see how these Big Ten tournaments and these other conference tournaments go, especially if you have, conferences that have 14 guys or more around that number where they're not small brackets. Sometimes if these guys already lock up spots, they end up just medically forfeiting out, or we've seen situations with injuries before where maybe like you're a middle seed, you make a run, then you forfeit out. No, if Penn State has a chance to get all 10 guys into the finals, they're going to do so. Absolutely, these guys won't be taking any matches off.
Yeah, and why I say that I think it's a guarantee. I can absolutely guarantee. Absolutely. So 7's kind of where it's are they going to get over or under 7.5? Because you have the 5 number 1 seeds that just, because of how talented they are, the favorable paths. So Shane Van Ness, Carter Starachi, right? Levi Haynes, obviously Mitchell Messenbrink. But it's, yes, Josh Barr is probably going to have to go through 2 NCAA title contenders to win this Big Ten championship. The top 3 guys at Big Tens are the top 3 guys overall in the country. And Cardenas and Barr, there's not much that separates them. And we saw it unfold with the tiebreaker that they ended up going to. And they could have went to ultimate tiebreaker, but Barr wanted to settle things right there and then with the reversal. So Penn State should have 7. I think that Barr, I lean Barr just being, being a Penn State show host, but Cardenas could absolutely, I think it's a coin flip there where Cardenas could get his revenge, learn from his mistakes. The one mistake, I don't know that he made mistakes in that bout. Just Barr just had the reversal in the final seconds. It's Luke Lillidahl overcoming the odds, because even Barr doesn't have unfavorable odds to get to the title and maybe even get revenge against a Stephen Buchanan. It's Luke Lillidahl defeating Matt Ramos in the semifinal. Now, if he does that, then I don't think there's anything stopping Lillidahl from winning a Big Ten championship. So it's that semifinal bout where, from Penn State's side of things, you would hope that Lillidahl would maybe have been the 3 seed to avoid Matt Ramos until you get to the championship. But the seeds are what they are. So, and that's what Penn State always says. Hey, we really don't, care where we wrestle, how we wrestle, what we're seeded in the postseason. We're just happy to be there and to compete. So, Nick, what are the odds that Lillidahl can actually do somewhat of the unthinkable outside of the Penn State circle and defeat Matt Ramos in the semifinal?
I don't think it's unthinkable. I just think Ramos is just wrestling the best he's ever wrestled right now. He's undefeated for a reason. He's the only guy who is undefeated at 125 pounds. He's the title favorite for the Big Ten. He's the title favorite for NCAAs in a couple of weeks as well. I would actually, go as far as to say, to me, it's hard to pick against Ramos this year. I mean, I go back to last year's Big Ten tournament where he had a quarterfinal matchup with Rutgers' Dean Peterson, and Peterson knocked him off, and that's when everyone was like, well, maybe Ramos is going to keep it going, and, coming off an NCAA finals loss the year before. He already had beaten Spencer Lee in the semis, and now it's like, all right, he takes the next step. Last year was kind of like, not necessarily a step back, and I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe he actually missed. He ended up missing the All-American podium last year, so he kind of did almost like a factory reset over the course of this past off season. So he's wrestling the best he's ever wrestled. I don't think it's unthinkable that Lillidahl can beat him. I think Lillidahl absolutely can beat him. I think you look at any of the top 4 guys right now. Ramos, look at Caleb Smith over in Nebraska, of course Peterson for Rutgers, and then Lillidahl Penn State. Those top 4 guys, to me, the champion's going to come from one of these top 4 seeds. 125 is very random nationwide. It could be very in the Big Ten, of course, as we've seen over the last couple of years. But I think, at least as far as the Big Ten is concerned, I think you're only going to see this weight in terms of who's going to be the champion on Sunday evening. It's going to come from one of the top 4 seeds. Now, a guy like Nicola Rivera from Wisconsin, now he's on the same side of the bracket as Matt Ramos. But, for example, he knocked off Dean Peterson and broke his, I think he had a 15 or 16 match winning streak during the regular season, and Rivera beat him in Piscataway. So it's like, all right, anybody could beat anybody on any given day. I'm not going to call for Rivera to beat Matt Ramos in a potential quarterfinal, because, again, Rivera does it to wrestle Cooper Flint from Minnesota first, which is a tough match in its own right. But it's a long-winded answer to say that the bracket is not as one-sided towards Ramos than people might think on the outside. If you look at the potential semifinals, if you just go by seeds, it's Ramos, Lillidahl, and Smith and Peterson. And at that point, I'd be like, okay, all bets are off. If any one of those 4 guys, as I mentioned at the start of my answer, I'd be like, okay, yeah, he's the champion. Yep, doesn't surprise me. It doesn't surprise me in the least. But I think he will have a good shot. He has to wrestle his best. I know Lillidahl's really, he only had one real loss, I'd say. I think he kind of got caught against Brendan McCrone, which ended up being a pin. Yeah. So I know it's 2 losses, but that was a loss where you're like, okay. Sometimes stuff like that happens. It's not like he was dominated. I think he just kind of got caught there. And of course, against Peterson, very tight match, 1 takedown match won by Peterson in the end at that one. So he's capable of beating anybody. I think Smith and Peterson are capable of beating anybody. And of course, I'm still favoring Ramos right now just based on his track record this season. But it would not be surprised. I would not be surprised Sunday evening if I see Luke Lillidahl either standing atop the podium or he's at least in the Big Ten finals squaring off against Smith or Peterson.
And the thing that Lillidahl has going for him is all the potential in the world. He's a former world champion on the international stage, and he's only going to get better. We haven't even seen the best version of Luke Lillidahl, but will that happen? Kind of like Tyler Kasek. We didn't see that until he lost at NCAA. So can Lillidahl tap into that potential now, or are we going to have to wait? That's one of the only weight classes that's of contention. We're just getting started here. Braden Davis. To say that he could be a finalist, he's got to go through Drake Ayala to get there. We'll talk about it more on the other side of this break. And today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started. There's no better place to get in on that action than with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss opening tip-off, or you want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. Using FanDuel's live betting feature is great because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether you're backing your favorite team for a late-game rally or you're picking a player to hit that clutch three, you'll never feel like you missed a chance. Plus, the app is super easy to use. And when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That is FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Braden Davis at 133, I think, has the most difficult path to a championship, to winning another Big Ten title, because he did it as a freshman at 125. But I think the way the bracket broke as a 6th seed, Davis was able to surprise and then got somewhat of a reality check at NCAAs. Now, that doesn't make Davis a liability or a bad wrestler, where everyone kind of seems to view him as the weak link of the lineup. Guy's been hurt. Okay, he's just dealt with a leg injury all season, first dual meet of the season, and then just never fully recovered. Well, according to Cael Sanderson, he's as close to 100% as he has been all season. So that's good news for Davis, who I still think has potential for himself to tap into. Defeating Lucas Bird and Drake Ayala back to back, because you'll meet Ayala in the semifinal. And then if you do that, if you do the unlikely, then you got to go defeat Lucas Bird. But when he wrestled that match against Bird, he wasn't near 100%. But I think where Davis, you can make an argument for him that, okay, he's only going to be back better and stronger, is because along the way, aside from Lucas Bird, he was defeating the likes of, you cover it, a Dylan Chauver from Rutgers, defeating Nick Bazakis. All America potential between those two. When Davis wasn't 100%, he was closer to 75, 80% maybe.
Yeah, I think Brady Davis has been a little hit and miss this year. That doesn't take anything away from how good he is, and he's still a top 5 guy in the country. We talk about this. It's like, he's only 8-3 this year, which is kind of mind-boggling considering you look at guys like Ayala and Bird. I think they're both 15-1 combined, or 15-1 each. So that's 30-2 combined, and then a guy like Braxton Brown from Maryland, who's having one heck of a season. He's 20-2 this year, and Davis, it's like, where's he been? As you mentioned, he's been banged up, Zach, which you really can't blame him for. Injuries happen, and injuries happen to a lot of these guys. But he's still really, really good. He does have that head-to-head over Dylan Chauver. We saw that match in the duel back in, I believe now it's January. I'm already losing track of my time with this loaded weekend coming up, but very close match, a 1 takedown match right there between 2 Big Ten champions from last year. That's why he's at 4. If he was at 5, again, it'd be the same thing. You're probably got to meet Chauver in the quarterfinal anyway, but he has a brutal path to making it back to the finals and winning a second Big Ten title for the second consecutive seasons, as you just pointed out. You got to get through Chauver in the quarterfinals, and then you have to look at Drake Ayala most likely in the semifinals. And then you're getting one of Bird or Braxton Brown, and Lucas Bird, the way he's been wrestling. I said at the beginning of the year, I'm like, well, he took a medical red shirt. I want to see how he bounces back first before I say, yeah, Lucas Bird, one of the best guys in the country. The way Lucas Bird's been wrestling this year, I would actually not be shocked, and it's going to depend upon this weekend. But I will go out on a limb and say if Lucas Bird reps Illinois and wins the Big Ten title this year, on Sunday, I should say, I'm going to have a hard time picking against him for the national title in Philadelphia in 2 weeks. He's wrestling that well. He is that good. But again, I think this is another weight class, just like 125, where you're looking at the top 5 guys. I don't want to forget Jacob Van D from Nebraska either. He's a guy who could certainly bust the bracket.
He's so hit or miss.
Yeah,
so hit or miss.
Yeah. I'm telling you, he can make a run. Would it stun me if Van D beats Braxton Brown? Then all of a sudden he sets up with Lucas Bird in the semis, and then you're talking about maybe, let's just say, a Drake Ayala, Jacob Van D final. No, I would not be shocked. I think this is a way they can go probably about 6 deep in terms of who's going to win the championship on Sunday. Again, that's Ayala, Bird, Brown, Davis, Chauver, or Van D. Any of them can win, just like 125. Very open weight class. But Davis, again, another long-winded answer to it, because this weight's so crazy. He does have a brutal draw now. Again, very heavily favored or Andrew Hampton in the first round from Michigan State, but who knows? Again, in a one takedown match, Davis could be starting to wrestle back after he loses to a guy like Dylan Chauver in the quarterfinals. That could flip on its head. But if he does get by Chauver, then again, as you said before, you got to run into Drake Ayala. This guy was a national finalist last year for Iowa, so it's like, pick your poison. Get through last year's Big Ten champion, get through an NCAA finalist, and then a guy who's ranked number 2 in the country. Most likely, you're going to see in the finals. So. Brutal draw for Davis. Can he get it done? Sure, but I think the injuries certainly have given me more questions on him. So I would say at minimum, you're going to see a tight match in the quarters with Chauver. If he wins, maybe he does fall a little bit short to Ayala in the semis.
It's a lot of what if. What is the potential? What is the potential of a Braden Davis? How strong is he? And then does that? This is the tournament setting. This isn't one dual meet, and then you get a break. You got to go and go and go. And for Braden Davis, hopefully he's able to hold up if stamina is an issue. Again, conditioning. It's not only about healing the injury; it's making sure that your stamina and your conditioning is at the top there. So he's probably the unlikeliest of the bunch to reach a finals there. If we have to pick one. And again, that's not to condemn Braden Davis, but because of how talented the Penn State lineup is overall at each individual weight class, I understand why people view Davis as a weak link, but he's going to be an All-American. If he's healthy at NCAAs, he should be an All-American at the end of the day. So let's move to 141, and we know that Beau Bartlett is most likely going to be in the final. Jesse Mendez, same thing as well. These two are on a crash course. Now, Brock Hardy might have something to say about that. I still think Mendez is as good as he is. But Brock Hardy is, I want to give him a fighting chance. I want to give Vance Von Bauer, honestly, I don't even overlook Sergio Lemley as that 5 seed. He's kind of the same thing as a Jacob Van D, where if he's on that day, it is actually difficult to defeat the Michigan wrestler here. So is this a guaranteed meeting again of Bartlett, Mendez? And is it a repeat of history where Mendez lost in the regular season, but then gets the Big Ten title and then a favorable path through NCAAs where same thing happened again?
Yeah, Zach, I think everyone's circling 141 and saying, all right, we're just waiting for the Beau Bartlett, Jesse Mendez final here on Sunday. And again, it's no disrespect to guys like Brock Hardy, who's really good. Vance Von Bauer has wrestled extremely well after becoming an All-American last year. I think he was a number 20 type and 20-something seed last year, if I remember correctly, but he has been on a different level this year. He's really leveled up for the Gophers this season. And then, of course, Sergio Lemley. I know Michigan's a little bit down this year, but Lemley's still really, really good. But to me, this final is going to go through Bartlett and Mendez. You're talking about 2 of the top 3 guys in the country. I believe Bartlett's still ranked number 1 according to most ranking servers. I don't know if Andrew Ramirez is number 1 according to some of these, but you're talking about those 3 guys that all have national title aspirations. Of course, with the 2 of the 3 being in the Big Ten, having to have a collision course. They're 2-2 against each other in their career. The way I look at this bracket, especially if these seeds hold, to me, it's so difficult. Because I mean, Bartlett's going to wrestle a lot of close matches. We know this. We've talked about this before. Von Bauer could certainly give him a run for his money, but I think, or Lemley, but I think Bartlett just finds a way to win those close ones. The only guy who's really edged him out lately in those close ones is Mendez, and I think if Mendez, runs, he's going to go up against a guy like Brock Hardy in the semifinals, most likely, maybe a Joey Oliveira from Rutgers. But either way, Mendez has just been steamrolling people this year. Again, Bartlett picked them off, and every time Bartlett and Mendez have wrestled in the last 2 years, 4 matches, the winner always has 4 points. It's 1 takedown, 4-1, it's 4-2. That's all it is. I think we're seeing Bartlett Mendez again. I think I actually would favor Mendez in a rematch here, trying to get one back, kind of very similar how last year played out, where Bartlett beat him in the regular season, and then Mendez gets him in the Big Ten finals, and then has that slight leg up in NCAAs. And, of course, we'll talk about NCAAs another time, but, of course, you throw the Andrew Ramirez factor out there in Philadelphia. But I think Mendez has the slight advantage. But, at this point, I'd still be stunned if it's anybody other than Bartlett and Mendez in this final.
We're going to go through some of the other best matchups, top matchups to expect at the end of the day. A surprise at 149 with Shane Van Ness getting the number 1 seed after there was, precedence. Ridge Levitt's the defending Big Ten title champ at 149. and they don't go with him. He drops to number 3. I think that's crazy. We're going to talk about that and some of the other hypothetical finals to wrap it all up here. Coming up next on Locked On Nittany Lions. And today's show is also brought to you by Nissan. We're all about the stats because numbers do not lie. And when it comes to the all-new Nissan Armada Pro 4X, the numbers are on an MVP level. With the ability to tow up to 8,500 pounds, it can quite literally carry the whole team, plus the gear wherever you need to go. It's powered by a twin-turbo V6 engine delivering the strength and performance to handle highways, back roads, and everything in between. And with room for up to 8 people, the Armada Pro 4X is built for big crews, big adventures, and even bigger memories. Whether you're exploring off-the-road trails or rolling up to the arena, the Armada Pro 4X brings power, versatility, and style wherever you go. Take your adventures to new heights in the all-new Nissan Armada Pro 4X. Learn more now at nissanusa.com. That is nissanusa.com. So Shane Van Ness at 149 gets the number 1 seed. I'm not surprised. That was actually my prediction because when you look at overall record, I get it. Precedence, love it's the defending champ at Big Tens, but this is this season and Kyle Parko defeats him. So how do you rank Kyle Parko at number 3? So at the end of the day, whoever was going to be the 3 seed was the loser in all of this. I don't think Van Ness was going to be anything lower than the 2 seed. So it just is what it is. I'm eager to see Van Ness versus D'Amelio in that rematch because D'Amelio gave him everything he could handle and somehow Van Ness still won. So this group is not devoid of talent at 149 across the board. Anybody could reach the final there. Eileen Van Ness, Eileen Parko, but could very well be Lovett. It could very well be D'Amelio as well.
Yeah, I think when you look at 149, the big winner was Shane Van Ness. Of course, if you get the number 1 seed, you're basically avoiding the Parko Lovett part of the bracket because now you look at 2 and 3, they're on the same side. You were bound to have 2 of these 3 guys on the same side of the bracket. So whoever did not get that number 1 seed, you're like, oh, great. Now I go through 2 of these guys to win a Big Ten title. I think it comes down to just one of those 3 winning in the whole thing on this one. It's hard to really pick these upsets, especially in a Big Ten conference setting when you just have so many dominant guys at the top. Because Van Ness has the 1 seed, Zach, I will lean towards him to getting back to the final. And I think it might just be matchup dependent. If he sees Ridge Lovett again, maybe Ridge has his number for some reason. If he sees Kyle Parko, maybe he beats Kyle Parko there, has a better chance to beat the Hawkeye. But I think you will see Van Ness in the finals, and I think I would be surprised if it wasn't Parko or Lovett coming out from the other side. So I really can't tell you who I'm going to pick because everyone beat each other. So it's really tough to predict until I see an actual matchup. But it'll definitely, to me, it's definitely Van Ness versus Parko or Lovett in the finals.
149 and 197 are almost mirror images of each other, both from the Big Ten conference perspective and then just nationally too, with Caleb Henson kind of taking the AJ Ferrari role, if you will, as that, okay, they're all grouped together. And then you have this one outsider as a national title contender. 157, I think this is a Ja'Cory Teamer versus Tyler Casack rematch. Casack getting the 2 seed, Teamer getting the 4 seed, and they avoid each other. Casack has a clear distance from Taylor. Now, Antrell Taylor's a really talented wrestler, but Casack just got so much better ever since that last NCAA postseason. So I don't know how strong of a 1 seed Ethan Miller is, and Ja'Cory Teamer, if kind of like Braden Davis, he's just been injured. We don't know for sure how is that shoulder injury going to linger, upper body injury going to linger for Teamer, but I fully expect Casack versus Teamer again in that Big Ten title.
I think Ethan Miller is so darn good, but I think Ja'Cory Teamer overall, when he's healthy, it's hard for me to say Ja'Cory Teamer is not the best 157-pounder in the country if he's healthy. Now, Tyler Casack has wrestled phenomenal this year. He does have the 1 loss, but of course it was due to injury. He was concussed against Miller, hence why Miller's still undefeated. That was a close match, though. I'm probably with you, Zach, that it's going to be Teamer and Casack. I do think Teamer will knock off Miller in a semifinal. I think Casack is just too good as long as he's basically clear of that concussion and he's feeling up to speed like he was most of the season. You're probably going to see Casack Teamer, and then who knows at that point how healthy is Teamer going to be against Casack and vice versa. So I would say Casack Teamer is probably your likely final, but I really can't say. It's hard for me to just completely discount Ethan Miller. He's undefeated for a reason. He has stepped up big time. He might be the guy who leveled up the most for Maryland, and I would say you're probably going to make the argument that Ethan Miller is Maryland's best pound for pound wrestler this season. He's really, really good. This is a deep weight, especially in the Big Ten. Don't forget about Tommy Askey from Minnesota. He can be a problem for some guys. Joey Blaze, by the way, for Purdue, the 6th seed. He might cause some issues with Antrell Taylor. You never know, but he's on the same side as K-Sack. So I'd be fascinated to see if Blaze does get that upset and actually manages to match up with K-Sack in a semifinal. But I think in the end, I am going to agree with you probably on this one. I would say K-Sack teamer for your final, and then another Penn State Iowa matchup right there, right in the middle.
And speaking of Penn State Iowa matchups, 165 is probably the easiest to project, not only at Big Tens, but NCAAs as well. We know the answer here. It's Mitchell Messenbrink and Mikey Caliendo of Iowa. Christopher Minto, I think, is a very talented freshman, and I'm eager to see how Minto and Caliendo do. But it is not a guarantee that Minto even makes that semifinal. Again, he's going to have tough competition as well. But if it wasn't for Messenbrink, I think Caliendo's an NCAA title contender. It's Messenbrink, then there's a gap, then Caliendo, then there's a gap, and it's just everybody else. So the point of debate is, can Caliendo make this one close and maybe shock Messenbrink in terms of the score? Because I still think Messenbrink wins here at 65.
Yeah, this one's pretty easy for me. You got to pick Mitchell Messenbrink. If you're not picking Mitchell Messenbrink, I would love to have what you're having, to be honest with you. You go back to Caliendo, him just, you want to say, hey, he's closing the gap. He got teched. He got teched earlier this year. I mean, to me, when you get teched by Mitchell Messenbrink, that's your only loss. I mean, there's nothing more you can do, and it's not like it was a freak tech. Mitchell Messenbrink's been doing this to everybody all season long. I'd be stunned if he loses a Big Ten final or he doesn't win the Big Ten title this weekend. Same goes for NCAAs, and I'm with you. It's Messenbrink, a gap, Caliendo, maybe a small gap, and then you go to guys like Terrell Barraclough from Utah Valley and the rest. I'm eager to see how, let's say 3 through 6 nationwide catch up to Caliendo if they can in NCAAs. But this one is Messenbrink and Caliendo. Poor Bo Mantanona from Michigan. He's on the same side as Messenbrink. Otherwise, I wouldn't actually rule him out, maybe pulling off a pretty big upset over a guy like Mikey Caliendo. I think Mantanona is really, really good. One of Michigan's young bright stars, but he's on the same side as Messenbrink, so he's going to fall short. But yeah, Messenbrink over Caliendo is my pick for 65 for sure.
And Messenbrink had a dominant victory over Mantanona as well. So there is we already know, because we have the example that Messenbrink's just been, he's in line to potentially contend for the Hodge. I mean, he's not potentially, he will contend for the Hodge Trophy.
Yeah, he's that dominant. Yep.
It's all him at 65. 174 is kind of the same up until Keegan O'Toole and Dean Hamity get there. So, but from the Big Ten perspective, this is Levi Haynes' bracket to lose. I like Carson Harchla of Ohio State a lot, but he's just battled injuries over his career. So he could be so much better and so much tougher. He already is from where he's recovered to, but I still feel like he's missing that next gear, that next level of competition. And that's just because of everything, the unfortunate circumstances here. But I fully expect, kind of like Messenbrink and Caliendo, I can almost bank that it's going to be Haynes and Harchla at 174.
I would probably lean Haynes Harchla. I'm going to push back a little bit, and I think Harchla has definitely he's definitely responded from the injuries. And don't get me wrong, this kid was just bruised and battered for just years. You go back to his freshman year, where I believe it was, I think he redshirted first, and then he got the free, then everyone got the free year in 21. But he was out that entire season. He was hurt, so and he was coming off an undefeated redshirt season. So you're like, okay, get him into the lineup if you're Ohio State. So essentially, you have 2 years of no Carson Harchla at Ohio State in the varsity lineup until 2022. He finished 7th on the podium, so he's an All-American. He's a blood round guy the next year. He was I think he was a little dinged up that year too. And then he goes 12-3 last year. And I forget exactly what. I think he was dinged up early, or he got hurt. Then he missed time. I forget the exact timeline of his injuries last year, but it caught up to him. They had to pull him back, put him in another medical redshirt, and that's when he went up a weight class, 2 to 74. And everyone remembers the whole story this year with 74 was, they pulled Rocco Welsh last year. Then it was like, okay, Welsh going to 84. Is he going to stay at 74? Then now they're redshirting Welsh this year. He was a national finalist last year. But Harchla has done a great job bouncing back, Zach. And again, his only loss this year is to Levi Haynes, and it was 6-4. I know. Well, Yeah, and I know Hartzler sports that, that big leg brace. He's all bandaged up. He's basically keeping his body like a mummy at this point. But I think he's wrestling the best he's wrestled since he was an All-American, and that's despite the injuries. And I think he's recovered as much as possible. So I would go Haynes over Hartzler in the finals, but I would not be shocked if that match is close. I can't quite pick Hartzler to upset Haynes. I think really the only guys who I think I would be comfortable picking and being a Levi Haynes are guys that he'll see at nationals, like a Keegan O'Toole or a Dean Hamity from Missouri or Oklahoma State. I think Lenny Pinto and Patrick Kennedy can certainly make some noise, especially Pinto, because he's away from Haynes in the bracket. He's on Hartzler's side, so could we see a Haynes Pinto final? I think so as well. I think those top 4 guys, realistically, the top 3 guys are probably going to be your biggest finalist candidates, just because it's Haynes is the 1 seed on one side. But on the other side, it could be a little bit more random, just because you have Hartzler, Pinto in a semi. I would like to see what Patrick Kennedy does against Haynes. Maybe keeps it close. I don't know. But even a Jackson Turley, he's going to wrestle Lenny Pinto in the quarters based on the seeds. Now, we've seen Turley be able to turn it up. Does he knock a guy like that off? Then goes against Hartzler, who he's had close matches with before. Who knows? So I think that other side of the bracket's a little bit more random. You're probably going to, but again, I think it still favors Haynes and Hartzler. Maybe Haynes in a close final, but probably as we get in the heavier weights, a lot of 1-2s are coming in these Big Ten finals.
I do like Turley as a dark horse candidate, if you will, to kind of disrupt, because Pinto's not exactly dominant, and and Hartzler, just again, what is his conditioning? How strong is he going to be going into this Big Ten tournament? But he's shown me a lot. Let's move to 184. Starocci McAnally. It 1 versus 2. It's just. But it's a matter of, so Nick, you'll be able to help me put this into perspective. Just how good is McAnally? Because he is a future face of this 184 class after it's vacated by Starocci Kakaisen. I know 184 is going to get a complete makeover, but this guy's going to be an NCAA finals contender year in and year out for the next few years.
Yeah, I'm maintaining my stance that Max McAnally is one of the best kids I've seen over the last 2 years. He was undefeated as a in red shirt last year. So, my debut to him was when Minnesota came to Piscataway, and he knocked off Brian Soldano in a very tight match, in a very tight duel at Jersey Mike's Arena last year. I'm just like, this kid's going to be unbelievable. He's undefeated this year. He's beaten everybody that's been put in front of him. He's turned it up a notch this season. I can't pick him over Carter Starocci. I did say this year that he is my dark horse to make the finals opposite of Starocci in an NCAA final. And again, but you have to go through guys like Parker Kekaisen and Dustin Plott. Not to mention that Gabe Arnold's in this bracket. We saw what Angelo Ferrari did against Dustin Plott last week, or the other week, of course. And you talk about future faces. Maybe it's like a McAnally, Arnold or Ferrari from Iowa is going to be in the mix there as well. Silas Allred. I mean, no disrespect to Silas Allred. I love Silas. He's a hammer for Nebraska, but to me, this is Starocci McAnally. Of course, Gabe Arnold is on the same side as Starocci, so we actually finally might see that match now in the semifinals. If Arnold was on the other side and I saw a guy like Gabe Arnold wrestle Max McAnally, I don't believe they wrestled this year, because I know Arnold only had 2 losses this year. Actually, they did. Arnold lost to Allred and McAnally, both 4-1 in sudden victory. Yeah, so 4-1 sudden victory matches, and then that happened back-to-back for Arnold. If he was on the same side as McAnally, I would have loved to see them run that back, but I think, Starocci McAnally, and I cannot wait to see Mac. If that's our final, I can't wait. That might be my favorite one, other than heavyweight, which is always fascinating with Stevenson and Kirkley. But I think McAnally Starocci would be my favorite final to watch for sure.
We're going to get to heavyweight in just a moment, but we got 197. We already previewed it in a sense by talking about, hey, who could be the finalist? Who can we guarantee to get to a Big Ten final? I can guarantee that Stephen Buchanan's going to be there. I know that, but the debate is, okay, can Barr defeat Cardenas again? Was that a flash in the pan? And that, hey, Barr is still on the outside looking in to the veterans of Buchanan and Cardenas, because those guys have been around for a long time and Barr's a first-year starter. So it would not surprise me if Cardenas gets revenge. But the question is Buchanan losing? Is it not necessarily like a mess and brink, but is it Buchanan? There's a gap. It's Barr, Cardenas, and Ferrari, and then a gap of everybody else. That's kind of what I'm curious to see.
Yeah, to me, it's so hard to say, this is the time where Stephen Buchanan loses this year. He is just so darn good. I believe you and I have talked about this before. the way he has just picked it up this season, and I'm talking, and don't forget, this is a guy who did finish third last year for Oklahoma. You know, he I know this is his third stop. It's his grad year this year. He was really good at Wyoming. He was really good at Oklahoma. And this is a guy that was in a blood round match with Rutgers' John Poznansky, and that went to tiebreakers. So you're talking about, maybe a match of inches where if it goes the other way, Buchanan falls short in the blood round last year and doesn't finish third. But then he goes on a huge run, gets third place. Hits the portal. He's with Iowa right now, and now he's even better. And the way we've seen him wrestle, it's like I don't know how you pick against him to not win the. Who do you pick for the NCAA title? I know AJ Ferrari's out there. You got guys like Barr and Cardenas are still out there.
One of those four,
right?
One of those four.
It's just so you have it's a loaded weight class up top, and I'm not even talking about guys like Michael Beard or Luke Serber from Lehigh and Oklahoma State, Stephen Little from Little Rock, who could see Ferrari in a Pac-12 final on Thursday or whenever. I forget what. I think that's Thursday, by the way. But Barr and Cardenas, I would lean Barr because he has the win right now. Okay, he has the win over Cardenas. I can't pick him to beat Stephen Buchanan. I would lean Josh Barr over Jacob Cardenas, which is kind of ironic because I think I stuck to my guns. My preseason pick this year for a national title was Jacob Cardenas, and I think I doubled down on it about halfway through the season. So I'm kind of leaning towards Josh Barr right now just based on how I see the bracket. But if Cardenas is in the final against Stephen Buchanan, wouldn't shock me in the least. But that'll be must-see TV for the Big Ten semifinals, Barr and Cardenas, should those seats hold.
Finally get to heavyweight. Gable Steveson, Greg Kirkfleet, 1 and 2. I don't know who's going to finish third, just to throw that out there. Now, that's the thing. I think what I'm more interested, honestly, is how the dust is going to settle with the 3 through 8 seeds.
Yeah.
There's now Nick Feldman. I think I would lean him, but outside of that, let's finish up with Kirkfleet and Steveson. And Nick Feldman's not far away if he's 100%, but because of how talented Steveson and Kirkfleet are, they're going to roll through. They're going to make it to the championship. I got to go with Steveson until Greg Kirkfleet proves something different. And it's not because Greg Kirkfleet hasn't done the work. He hasn't gone through the training. Do I think he's closed the gap? Yes. But by how much?
Yeah, that I think that's the biggest question. I think the only guy Steveson did not tech or pin this year was Nick Feldman of Ohio State, but he still majored him. He's still beating him by, what was it, 8 to 10 points or whatever the final score of that match was. Yeah, this is Steveson, Kirkfleet all the way. You mentioned who's going to finish third. I mean, yeah, Feldman's a big candidate for it. He did lose head-to-head to Heinzelman, who's quietly had a really, really good season as a grad transfer from Michigan. Again, Michigan just doing great with the heavyweight transfers, of course, being able to plug those guys right in. And, those guys turn it up a notch. Look at Lucas Davison last year. He's at Northwestern his whole career. And then he ends up making the NCAA finals last year for Michigan as a 10 seed. He kind of knocked off a few guys. So Michigan, there's a real Michigan effect, kind of how we see the Penn State Magic in the postseason, Zach. So I think Michigan has some there with Heinzelman. As far as who finishes third, Heinzelman, Feldman, Luffman, Yaroslav Slavakovsky, any of those guys wouldn't shock me. It's basically a race for third at this point. You know what I mean? So, but I can't pick against Gable Steveson in the Big Ten or at NCAA's until if Kirkfleet keeps this close, which again, nothing against a national champion. I don't think he will. I think Stevenson's going to beat Steveson. I'll say it right now. I'd be surprised if Steveson doesn't win this one probably by a major. I would say he'll win anywhere between 6 to 8 points, which of course is a decision to a major. But if he wins by less than 6 to 8 points, I would be stunned.
Does Kirkfleet get a takedown? Can he get a take? I think that's kind of that's the threshold.
Can he get a takedown? Yes.
Yeah.
Will he?
I think he can.
Will he? No, I don't think he will. Which is mind-boggling, right? Yeah. Considering these two guys have wrestled before. Now, granted, it was about 3 or 4 years ago whenever they last wrestled the NCAA tournament, or I forget what their actual last meeting off the top of my head. But the way Steveson has just come back this year and has just mauled everybody who's been thrown in front of him. Yeah, I'm sorry to Big Greg. I would love to see a close match because it would just be great for my wrestling brain. It'd be great for ratings, as we know. And then if that's a rematch at NCAA's in the finals, that'll be must-see TV as well. But I think, I'll play it conservatively. How about a 6-2 final? Gable Steveson wins. Something like that.
That's going to do it for this edition of Locked On Nittany Lions, a full Big Ten tournament preview with the wrestling expert himself. That is Nick Kosko over on the other side. Check out his work down in the description. Please leave a like on this episode, share it with friends and family. Let us know your thoughts down in the comment section. Nick, it's always great to chat wrestling with you. Can't wait to do this again for NCAAs as well. Appreciate your time so much.
Appreciate you, Zach. Thank you.
And as always, thank you so much for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen and watch every single day. For your second listen and watch, check out Locked On College Basketball with hosts Isaac Shade and Andy Patton. It's March. The madness is here. Be the most informed college basketball fan now. Become an expert with Locked On College Basketball. It's available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts, and it's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where does your team every day.